What's up, everybody? Welcome back for another video. Today is the detail of van number one out of a van contract that I have through a local company. It's an excellent way to get your foot in the door for multiple details if you're just starting out. Usually these vans or work vans are really filthy, and any changes you do will be welcomed and noticed. So this van is a 15-passenger Ford Transit. It's used every single day to transport clients to and from different places. And so it's heavily soiled. It's the impossible carpet, as Luke Wilson kind of termed it. And so there's just gunk and crap just plugged into this rat's nest of a carpet. The step-ups were destroyed and scuffed. The same thing with the doors and everything else. That's just kind of how the nature of the beast is with these vans. And so, talking to your customer, making them known right off the bat that it is not going to be cleaned up very easily, and that there's probably going to be a lot of stains, a lot of soil left, just because what they're paying versus what's expected is going to be a huge difference. So, letting your customers know right off the bat just the severity of the carpet and the overall condition of the car is really helpful. Usually doing a walkthrough is something that I do, but in this case, I have already cleaned these vans before 3 years ago, so I knew what I was getting into, and the CEO already knew just how bad it was. So all that I was contracted to do was to vacuum and wipe everything down. So I started off with a drill brush and just loosening everything up as best as I could and getting everything up out of the deep fibers. Uh, because I was only contracted to do vacuuming and wipe everything down, I like to take some time to experiment on these kinds of carpets because the typical detail that I do doesn't include this kind of carpet. And so as I mess around and try new things and new techniques that I've learned from other detailers on YouTube, this is a good time to do so because I know it's going to take me a while. Um, this van normally should only take me about 4 hours, but because I had time on my hands and I wanted to experiment different techniques, this was a good chance to do it. Here I'm using the yellow drill brush. It's a little bit stiffer than the white one that I typically use on normal cars, and it's just firmer, so it kicks out more, and I start the vacuuming process. Um, in this particular van's case, I did extract the entire van's carpet and the seats. They did not pay me to do that, but I wanted to experiment, like I said, and I was having a really hard time getting all this glitter out, so I figured I'd give it a whirl. But it came out loose enough. So here I am extracting the first patch. And so I sprayed down some Fabric Clean by Chemical Guys, and I sprayed down some Superclean because that's my go-to just to get some of the heavy grease out from the shoes that the clients have to wear. You never know what you're dealing with, and it's black carpet, so luckily the stains weren't easily visible, but that's what's in my purple sprayer right there. That's Superclean. And then I have a 2-gallon sprayer that has my Fabric Clean because I use a lot of that when I'm extracting. As you can see in the extractor, it's not pulling up a ton of dirt or really nasty spills, but it is making a huge difference in how it looks. If you can see from the right to the left side, it just looks cleaner and it looks more matte, and it turned out nice. Here you can see just how nasty that water is. Granted, the actual container has like this purple blue tint to it. Um, That's the only downfall of this little green Pro Heat is I am constantly dumping that thing out because it doesn't have a big reservoir. And so I actually, since this was van number one out of possibly 6 or 7 or 8, I started pouring all of the extraction juice into a big tub. And there'll be pictures in the next van of just how filled it got, um, and just how nasty that water was. Here I am extracting the seats. I didn't use the drill brush because it was in really good shape, at least the fibers were. There weren't a lot of stains on this. All it needed was an extraction and the fabric clean. So here's the fabric clean. I don't believe I used Superclean on the seats. I don't think they were needed. And so I think my next upgraded purchase will be a better extractor, because this little green Pro Heat, as you can see, the extraction hose is really short, and so I'm constantly having to move it around, and it's not a big deal, but it doesn't necessarily warrant a $400 or $500 extractor just yet, although I could probably use one. Um, Got to make sure you do the armrests and get everything that you can, move the seatbelt out of the way, get the headrest, get underneath the headrest, and make sure that you get a thorough job. Now, I was originally planning on including all this audio as I explain how I go about the seat treatment typically when I extract, but um, this DaVinci Resolve that I use for making videos is just kind of a little finicky, and I'm still trying to figure it out as I make these YouTube videos for you guys, and hopefully they get better over time. But I have a lot of videos saved and ready to edit. I just have to get to it. So um, I hope to get better in the future here. So it's a pretty simple process. I don't use super clean on these seats. You want to get that powerful. I typically try not to use degreaser on seats at all. I just like to use the fabric clean, something that's a little bit more pH neutral, that's not going to be super crazy. Degreasers can stain, they can leave hard marks, and you just want to be very careful that when you're doing customers' cars that you don't wreck them or leave them in worse shape, because if you don't have insurance, you're going to have to pay out of pocket. It'd be your luck that you just get that one customer that freaks out and wants you to fix it or replace it. Here I'm using my scouring pad to do the sides and clean all this up. This is again all they were paying me for, was a vacuum and to wipe everything down. But I spent a lot of time extracting the carpet and extracting the seats, and I ended up spending 7 hours on this van, and I should have only spent about 4. But as I continued on with the jobs, like I just did van number 4 yesterday, and it only took me about 3 hours. I had my system down, and I didn't spend a lot of time doing extra work. And so, as I figured out what I was doing, God, what same process for the sides as I do with the back doors, actually all the doors. Only when I get to the front doors where there's a bit more stuff like cup holders and document holders and vents that I'll use the steamer, or I'll use something a little bit more specific for the finer details. But for these side doors and back doors, you just scouring pad and a detail brush, that'll work just fine. I use the magic eraser for all the black scuffs, and it usually gets out everything. It is a dangerous tool to have for a detailer because it really does make a difference. Um, Here we move on to doing the step ups. It was just, this had the most of the glitter and it was really ground in, but as you can see, it came out really well. And just a little agitation. This is a stiff bristled like painting brush that I got from Harbor Freight, and just a little bit of scrubbing over in one pass, wiping it up, and that's it. It really cleaned up nice and made a pretty big difference. Here we start the vacuuming finally. I always do a rough, really fast, quick pass on the area, and then I come back and do more of the finer pieces and make sure I get all the nooks and crannies now. So as you can see, I come back up to the camera and start working my way and grinding it in. This is after obviously I drill brushed all this and loosened everything up. you can kind of see the carpet in terms of this being the rat's nest stuff. It's just matted down. There's no rhyme or rhythm to it, and it's just there's no traditional carpet is more of like a loop, and this carpet is really just a bunch of fabric just smashed down and glued together. So the driver's side and the passenger side are the worst. They didn't have any mats, and so here I am just dousing it in fabric clean, and then there was some heavy salt stains, which is pretty common for Michigan cars. If you don't have a mat, then I'm going to have to deal with salt stains, which I typically just use vinegar. That cleans up salt stains super fast. It dissolves it and comes out really, really quick. Living in the Midwest, that just kind of that's expected, and I see it all the time. So after I hit it with the drill brush here, and it makes a big mess, you'll see that the stain from the salt is still there. Sometimes I can get away with just using fabric clean, but usually I end up having to do a second pass with vinegar. But I usually do a first pass with this just to get the majority of the problems. Um, the first drill brush kit that I got was the white one, so I had the white like cone version, and then it was the white hockey puck, um, and that was fine, and that works for a lot of good carpets. But I bought a second one for Amazon Prime Day, and it had like 10 pieces to it. It was like an extension, the yellow, this red one, which is super stiff, and then the yellow cone brush, which I use for blowing out carpets. And my new system now is just using compressed air and that yellow drill brush cone, and that makes a huge difference. I mean, those two combined is just super powerful. So if you see there where I'm going over, that's salt stains right there. It's just not coming out. And so I had to run inside and grab my vinegar spray and come out to clean it up. I don't think I caught that on video though, so I apologize. Here I am doing the steaming. I usually do just one pass before this with Superclean and a rag, but in this case the front dash wasn't in bad shape, so um, just a quick once over with the steam, hit all the cup holders and all the nastiness, and it turned out really well. Using that detail brush is kind of the hidden key, because the steam will blow it and it'll heat it up and it'll get rid of a lot of dust, but unless you're agitating stuff, it's not going to clean it. So you need to have either a brush or a scrubby or something to get into the cracks and crevices. And those are the things that people notice as the drivers get into the driver's seat. They look at the cup holders, they look at the vents, they look at the little crevices of all their little the dashboard, and so they notice that stuff, and you have to pay attention, and you have to kind of get in the zone when we're cleaning this area of, if I get in the car, what is the first thing I'm going to look at? And usually that's what the customers look at. It always boggles my mind how whenever I detail a car, the only things people really comment on are the wheels being shiny and the cup holders being clean. It seems like that's all people really care about, and it just makes me laugh. The steamer that I have is McCullough. I got it from Harbor Freight again. That's kind of my go-to place, just because I do this part-time on the side, and it's cheap and it gets me through what I need to do. Um, I use it in the home as well for many things, and it just really works out. And so I think it was like 125 bucks, and I bought it 5 years ago, and it's still killing it. The only thing that you have to be conscious of is dumping the water out after you're done with it. So here's the after. You can still see some of that glitter. It just, I mean, you can only go over it so many times before you're depreciating your profit. So you just got to move on. So the doors came out fine. Um, Driver's side, I put everything back where I found it. Super clean. Dash cleaned up well. Was pretty happy with the overall condition, everything. Got all the cracks, crevices. Again, you can look at the carpet from here and just kind of tell that it's pretty ugly, um, but it's as good as it's going to be. So the step-ups turned out well. I didn't do the outside for these first three vans that you're going to see videos for. They didn't want me to do an outside job, but the next three, vans 3 through 6, are farm vans, and those they wanted me to do an outside job on, just like a quick and dirty wash. So um, they had two mats. This was probably the best kept van out of all of them. That's why I grabbed it for the first one, because it was probably going to be the easiest, but it actually wasn't. So, but everything cleaned up really well. You can tell that it's definitely better than what it was. You got to make sure that you clean up these metal brackets from when you're slinging crap with the carpet brush, and any kind of extraction stuff that you do. You usually end up vacuuming 2 or 3 times during a detail, just because things get dirty as you clean them, and that's just how it goes. So I think for this job I charged 300 bucks, and it took me about 7 hours, like I said. And so thanks for watching, and hopefully we'll get you some more. Have a good one.